The headlines, the issues impacting you and your family. This week in Cincinnati on 9 on Your Side.
This week in Cincinnati, President-elect Donald Trump, after a long, bitter campaign. Where we go next after the vote.
It's been what they call a historic event, but to be really historic, we have to do a great job. And I promise you that I will not let you down. We will do a great job.
I still believe, as deeply as I ever have, that if we stand together and work together with respect for our differences, strength in our convictions, and love for this nation, our best days are still ahead of us.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Craig McKee. Welcome to This Week in Cincinnati. The race is over, and Donald Trump is now the president-elect. Today, we are looking at how Ohio and the Tri-State fit into his victory. In Ohio, let's take a look at the numbers here. It is a sea of red for Trump. The only urban counties turned out for Hillary Clinton, including the Cleveland area, Columbus, and Hamilton County here. The Kentucky area now, the show of support for Trump was even stronger. Only 2 counties threw their support behind Clinton, who lost a lot of support in the Commonwealth because of her comments about coal. And the fact Indiana came out for Trump probably isn't much of a surprise for many, since Governor Mike Pence was his running mate in this campaign. The state has only voted for a Democrat for president 5 times since 1900. Now, zooming in on the Tri-State area, the results in Hamilton County show that Clinton did mount a strong campaign here, topping Trump by 10% by taking the county's urban core. But Donald Trump took the surrounding suburban counties, and we're talking about Butler there, Warren, and Claremont, by 2-to-1 margins, in fact. And joining us now to take a closer look at all of that and where we go from here, WCPO political reporter Paula Christian and Xavier political science professor Sean Comer. Thank you both for being here. All right, well, let's talk about this. It's been a bitter campaign. In the last week leading up to Election Day, we saw Hillary Clinton and the Clinton campaign a lot here in the Cincinnati area. The Trump campaign came to Ohio, but not as much to our neck of the woods. What made a difference here, and what are you seeing now that you're able to go through the numbers?
Well, I think immediately you see that voters didn't turn out quite in the levels needed in a lot of the urban areas, specifically Hamilton County, but also across the state and across the country compared to rural areas and some of the more suburban, and that was a big factor in the election.
Yeah, I think from the very beginning, everyone said turnout will determine who wins, who can get their base of supporters to the polls. And there was some question initially whether Trump supporters, many of whom are not devoted traditional voters, would actually show up, and they did. And Hillary Clinton had a harder time motivating her base, although she did outperform in Hamilton County, one of the few areas in the state where she did do very well.
As we know, obviously, she won the popular vote, he won the electoral. Does that say anything, and this isn't something that's common that happens, does that say anything about what we're seeing, or is that more just about the campaigns focused on those states they knew they needed those particular electoral votes?
I think it says something about the time they spent in those states, but at the end of the day, it didn't turn out to be enough on the Clinton side, and Trump spent a lot of time in areas that traditionally haven't seen presidential candidates as often. You didn't see him come into Cincinnati nearly as often, spent time with voters who haven't voted as much, and that swayed the election in those key states.
Now, we did have, of course, the meeting of President-elect Trump and President Obama. They did meet at the White House. This is a traditional thing that happens. We want to have you listen now to that exchange of words between President Obama and President-elect Trump.
This was a meeting that was going to last for maybe 10 or 15 minutes, and we were just going to get to know each other. We had never met each other. I have great respect. The meeting lasted for almost an hour and a half, and it could have, as far as I'm concerned, it could have gone on for a lot longer.
I have been very encouraged by the, I think, interest in President-elect Trump's wanting to work with my team around many of the issues that this great country faces.
That is an exchange that many people did not expect to happen. Do you take away from anything from this, or is it just, all right, 2 guys meeting, one current leader, one future leader meeting because it's a formality?
I thought it was hopeful. I think it's hopeful that maybe everybody can put aside their differences and govern. I think that's, the big question is, will people hold a grudge from their campaign feuds, or will they put it behind them and be able to work together?
Yeah, I don't think there's a lot of downside for either person in attending the meeting. For Trump, it's a chance to sit down with the president and talk a little bit and show that maybe he can be the unifying force, as he said in his speeches early after being elected. And for Obama, there's a lot of policies that he's very passionate about, he's cared deeply for, has worked very hard for 8 years to work towards. And so if there's a chance that some of those can be salvaged and in the Trump presidency, then I think he's going to work to see what he can do.
There are protests across the country, people just not happy that Donald Trump was indeed elected. We can take a look at some video here from New York with some of those protesters. We've seen them in San Diego and Portland and Chicago. And really that meet and greet, if you will, if you want to call it that, at the White House between President Obama and President-elect Trump, it needs to send that message of it's okay. We're going to move forward, and obviously, Donald Trump has his agenda and his plan for our future, but they really, as national leaders, need to send that message of calm.
I think even beyond the people that didn't like Trump for his policies, people were most concerned about his unpredictableness and his fitness for office. And if he can have more scenes like that, where he is sitting with the president and speaking, looking presidential, speaking through the voice of reason, I think it will do well to bring over some of those people that didn't like him for that reason.
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, the policies will sort of make a decision on how people feel about him. I think the other piece was the rhetoric used throughout the campaign, and that pushes people in a corner and causes fear for some people. And you've got other people excited about a president who speaks his mind, unlike past presidents and past elected officials. And so at the end of the day, as the policies roll out, and as he, especially those first 100 days in office, I think you'll get a clearer picture of whether or not these protests will slow down or pick up pace.